The Vanguard Eternal was the most beautiful ship in the entire galaxy. It stretched 150 kilometers from front to back, larger than most cities on Earth. The ship gleamed silver and blue under the light of distant stars. Every species in the Galactic Union felt proud when they looked at it. This was their flagship, their symbol of peace and cooperation. Inside the massive ship, 15,000 crew members from 47 different alien species worked together. The Velkari managed the powerful energy systems with their advanced quantum technology. The Thronics built perfect structures that never bent or broke. The Lumens created computer systems so smart they could predict problems before they happened. Every species contributed their best technology to make the Vanguard perfect. In a small maintenance section near the lower decks, 5 humans worked quietly. They were part of Earth's crew, but nobody paid much attention to them. Humans had joined the Galactic Union only 80 years ago. The other species saw them as newcomers who still had much to learn. The humans got small jobs like fixing broken doors or checking air filters. It was basic work that the advanced aliens did not want to do. Commander Taijin led the human maintenance team. He was 42 years old with gray hair at his temples and steady hands that had fixed 1,000 broken things. Before joining the Vanguard, he had worked as a military mechanic in Seoul. He knew how to stay calm when things went wrong. His team respected him even if the aliens did not. Hyejin was the youngest member with a bright mind for solving problems. She had studied materials and how different substances worked together. At 28, she often saw solutions that others missed. But when she suggested ideas to the alien engineers, they usually smiled politely and ignored her. Daehun was 35 and built like a worker who used his hands every day. He came from Incheon and had learned his skills in factories and repair shops, not fancy schools. He could look at a broken machine and somehow know what was wrong. The other humans called him a machine whisperer. Minjae was quiet and thoughtful. At 31, he spent his days working with computer systems, making human and alien technology talk to each other. He had endless patience for technical puzzles that would frustrate others. He worked slowly but never made mistakes. Yoonji was the baby of the group at 26. She had quick hands and could fix mechanical problems faster than engineers with twice her experience. She came from Gwangju with dreams of proving that humans belonged among the stars, but the senior alien engineers barely let her touch anything important. On this particular day, the Vanguard was traveling through hyperspace. The ship moved faster than light, crossing distances that would take years in just hours. Everything seemed normal. The crew went about their duties. Taijin and his team were replacing some old air filters in Corridor 9. Then the ship shook. It was not a big shake at first. Just a small vibration that made the lights flicker. But Taijin had been on ships long enough to know that small shakes often meant big problems. He dropped his tools and ran toward the nearest control panel. The ship shook again, harder this time. Alarms started blaring throughout the Vanguard. Red warning lights flashed in every corridor. Taijin's communication device buzzed with emergency messages. Something was very wrong. The Vanguard had encountered a gravitational anomaly in hyperspace. A collapsed star fragment had created a pocket of twisted space-time that no one had detected. The ship's sensors had not seen it coming. Now the flagship was caught in gravitational forces that pulled it in different directions at once. In the main engineering bay, alien crews scrambled to respond. The Velkari engineers tried to stabilize their quantum power cores, but the fluctuating gravity made the delicate systems go haywire. The Thronic structural specialist watched in horror as their perfect crystal support beams began to crack. The Lumen's computer system started showing error messages faster than anyone could read them. Every species had built their technology to work perfectly under normal conditions. But these were not normal conditions. The twisted gravity created chaos that none of the sophisticated systems could handle. Within minutes, the situation became a disaster. The Velkari power cores shut down completely. Without power, the lights went dark. The air circulation stopped. The ship's engines died. The Vanguard dropped out of hyperspace and tumbled through normal space like a broken toy. The Thronic support structures continued to crack and shatter. The beautiful crystal beams that held the ship together were not designed to flex or bend. Under stress, they simply broke. Parts of the ship began pulling apart from each other. The Lumen's artificial intelligence systems entered what they called recursive logic loops. The computers were trying to find perfect solutions to problems that had no perfect answers. They kept calculating and recalculating, stuck in their own thoughts, unable to help. High Coordinator Velnus, the Velkari administrator who ran the ship, sent out distress calls. But the nearest rescue ships were days away. The Vanguard had maybe hours before life support failed completely. 15,000 crew members were going to die. In the main engineering bay, the alien specialist argued. The Velkari said they needed special quantum calibration equipment to restart the power cores. That equipment was not available. The Thronic said they needed molecular forges to rebuild the broken structures. Those forges required power the ship did not have. The Lumens said their AI systems needed clean data to reboot. That data was corrupted. Everyone had solutions that required things the damaged ship could not provide. They stood around talking about proper procedures and correct protocols while the oxygen levels dropped and the temperature began to fall. The alien engineers could not think outside their training. They only knew how to do things the right way, and the right way was impossible now. Tajin watched all this from the doorway of the engineering bay. His team stood behind him waiting for orders. He made a decision. His team was going to act whether anyone gave them permission or not. He gathered Hyejin, Daehyun, Minjae, and Yoonji together in their small maintenance room. The lights were dim now, running on emergency batteries. The air already felt stale. They are waiting for perfect solutions, Tajin said quietly. We do not have time for perfect. We need solutions that work right now, even if they are ugly. Hyejin nodded. What do we have that still works? They made a quick inventory. The human-maintained section still had some power from backup batteries. Their tools were simple but functional. The cargo bays held materials meant for other purposes. And most importantly, they had 5 humans who knew how to improvise. Life support first, Tajin decided. If everyone dies from lack of oxygen, nothing else matters. The team split up. Each person had a job. They moved through the dark corridors with flashlights, looking for anything useful. They did not ask permission. They did not fill out proper forms. They just worked. Behind them, the alien crews continued their meetings, discussing what should be done if only they had the right equipment. The humans were already doing what could be done with the equipment they actually had. The Vanguard Eternal drifted through space, dark and dying. But in its corridors, 5 humans had started a race against time. They were going to save the galaxy's flagship using nothing but human stubbornness, creativity, and a willingness to accept imperfect solutions. The aliens had built the most advanced ship in history. Now it was broken. The humans were going to fix it with whatever they could find, even if that meant using methods the aliens would consider primitive and crude, because sometimes crude solutions that work are better than elegant solutions that do not exist. And so it began. Hyejin ran through the dark corridors with her flashlight cutting through the darkness. She was looking for the biodomes, the garden sections where the crew grew plants for decoration and relaxation. Most people thought the gardens were just pretty places to visit, but Hyejin knew they had atmospheric processors to keep the plants alive. She found the main biodome on deck 12. Inside, the plants were already dying without light or proper air circulation. But the processors were still running on emergency power. Hyejin smiled. This could work. She called Taejin on her communicator. I found something. The biodome atmospheric processors are still working. They were never meant for life support, but we could modify them. Will the aliens approve? Taejin asked. Probably not. The systems are not rated for critical use. But we are running out of oxygen. We need to try. Taejin did not hesitate. Do it! Hyejin started working immediately. She pulled panels off the processors and began rewiring them. The work was not pretty. She used whatever cables she could find, connecting systems that were never designed to work together. She bypassed safety protocols and overrode the automatic controls. A Velkari engineer found her working and looked horrified. You cannot do this. These systems are not certified for primary life support. You are violating safety regulations. Hyejin did not stop working. The certified systems are dead. This uncertified system is our only option. You can file a complaint later if we are still alive. She connected the biodome processors to the ship's ventilation network using ducting from a cargo hold. The ducts were meant for moving grain, not air, but they would work. She used human-made pressure regulators because they were simple and reliable. Within 2 hours, she had built a crude but functional life support system. When she activated it, the system made terrible noises. It clanked and wheezed. Air moved through the ducts with a sound like a giant breathing, but oxygen levels started rising throughout the ship. 15,000 crew members took deeper breaths and felt their panic ease. Meanwhile, Daehyun and Yoonji were working on power. The Valkyrie quantum cores were completely dead. Restarting them required technology that was not available. But Daehyun had a different idea. Chemical batteries, he told Yoonji as they walked toward the shuttle bays. Yoonji looked confused. Those are ancient technology. Why would that help? Ancient, yes, but they work. Every human shuttle has backup batteries because Earth safety regulations require them. The aliens always thought we were being paranoid. Now that paranoia will save them. They reached the shuttle bay and started removing batteries from every human shuttle and lifeboat they could find. Each battery was small, only meant to power a shuttle for a few hours. But there were 200 shuttles. Together, all those small batteries could provide significant power. A Valkyrie power specialist watched them work and shook his head. Chemical batteries? That is primitive technology from 1,000 years ago. They are bulky and inefficient. This is beneath the vanguard. Daehyun wiped sweat from his face. Primitive technology that works is better than advanced technology that does not. Help us carry these or get out of the way. For 36 hours straight, Daehyun and Yoonji worked. They carried batteries through dark corridors. They connected them in series, linking hundreds of batteries into one massive array. They used whatever cables and connectors they could find. The final setup looked like a mess of wires and boxes that would make any engineer cry. But when Daehyun connected the battery array to the ship's power distribution network, lights began flickering on throughout the vanguard. Not all of them, just the critical systems. The batteries could only provide 8% of normal power. But 8% was infinitely better than 0. Medical equipment came back online. Communication systems reactivated. Control panels lit up. The crew could see and talk to each other again. Hope started replacing despair. With basic life support and power restored, attention turned to the ship's structure. The thronic support beams were shattered. Large sections of the ship were held together by little more than luck. One wrong move and the vanguard would break apart. Senior architect Brexon, the Thronic's master builder, explained the problem to anyone who would listen. Our crystal beams were grown atom by atom in molecular forges. They are perfect structures. To repair them properly, we need the forges. Without them, there is no solution. Yoonji had been listening. She approached Brexon carefully. What if we do not repair them? What if we just reinforce them? Brexon looked at her like she had suggested painting the ship with mud. Reinforce them? With what? Steel plates, welding, external bracing. The Thronic's architect recoiled in horror. Welding? That crude fusion of metal through heat? It introduces stress points and impurities. The Vanguard is a masterpiece of engineering, not some industrial warehouse. Yoonji kept her voice calm. Right now, the Vanguard is a broken ship that might fall apart at any moment. We are not trying to make it beautiful. We are trying to keep it in one piece for 3 more days until rescue arrives. Can your perfect beams do that? Brexon had no answer. His perfect solutions required resources they did not have. Yoonji's crude solution could be done with what they had. Taijin, Yoonji, and Daehyun suited up for spacewalks. In the cargo holds, they found steel plates meant for an orbital station construction project. The plates were heavy and awkward, but they were strong. Working outside the ship was dangerous. The Vanguard was still tumbling slowly through space. The artificial gravity was not working properly. But the 3 humans moved carefully along the hull, carrying steel plates and welding equipment. They found the worst cracks in the Thronic's beams and began welding steel plates over them. It was like putting bandages on wounds. The welds were rough and uneven. The plates did not match the ship's elegant curves, but stress sensors showed the dangerous flexing was stopping. The ship was holding together. Inside the ship, Minjae faced his own challenge. The Lumen's artificial intelligence systems were still frozen in their logic loops. Without the AI, the ship could not navigate or control its systems properly. The Lumen's programmers insisted they needed to fix the AI correctly, which would take weeks they did not have. Minjae had a different plan. He would not fix the AI. He would replace it with something simpler. He started pulling control code from human shuttles. Human ships did not use sophisticated AI. They used simple programs that followed basic instructions. These programs were not intelligent or elegant, but they were reliable. They kept ships flying even when conditions were bad. Minjay cobbled together a hybrid control system. It used simple subroutines for navigation, basic monitoring programs for ship systems, and manual controls for anything complex. A Lumens programmer watched him work with growing horror. "This is technological regression," the Lumen said. "Your system cannot optimize fuel usage. It cannot predict maintenance needs. It cannot calculate the most efficient routes. It is barely better than manual operation." Minjay nodded. "You are right. It cannot do any of those things. But it can keep the ship flying. That is all we need right now." When Minjay activated his system, the change was immediate. The ship's thrusters fired in response to commands. Navigation displays showed their position. System readouts appeared on screens. Human operators had to input commands manually instead of asking an AI to do it. The calculations were approximations instead of perfect numbers. But the Vanguard could maneuver again. They could set a course for the nearest starbase. High Coordinator Wellness toured the ship and saw what the humans had accomplished. The elegant Vanguard now ran on garden processors, shuttle batteries, welded steel plates, and simple computer programs. It was ugly and crude and completely against every principle of advanced engineering. It also worked. The crew was alive. The ship was intact. They were moving toward rescue. Wellness found Taejin in the human maintenance room. The human commander looked exhausted. His crew was scattered throughout the ship, monitoring their improvised systems. "I need to understand," Wellness said. "How did you do this? How did 5 humans save a ship that hundreds of our finest engineers could not?" Taejin looked up with tired eyes. "You were waiting for the right way to fix things. We just fixed them any way we could. Sometimes that is the difference between survival and death." The Vanguard limped through space on its improvised systems. The journey to the nearest starbase would take 3 more days. The ship was alive but fragile. Everyone knew the crude repairs might fail at any moment. But they were moving, and that was better than drifting helplessly. High Coordinator Wellness requested a private meeting with Commander Taejin. They met in what used to be an elegant conference room. Now it was dimly lit by emergency lighting, and the temperature was uncomfortably cold, but they could talk privately. Wellness looked at the human commander with genuine curiosity. 3 days ago, she had barely noticed humans existed. Now she needed to understand them. "Your methods are so different from ours. Where did you learn to work this way?" Taejin thought for a moment. "Earth is not like your homeworlds. It is a difficult place. The weather changes constantly. The ground shakes. Diseases spread. Resources are limited. Nothing on Earth works perfectly for long. We had to learn to adapt." Wellness leaned forward. "Explain more. How does a harsh world create these skills?" Taejin stood and walked to the window, looking at the stars outside. "When you grow up on a stable world with plenty of resources, you can build perfect systems. You have time to optimize everything. Your technology works great as long as conditions stay good. But when conditions change, those perfect systems break." He turned back to face her. "Humans never had that luxury. Our equipment fails. Our plans fall apart. We learn to expect problems and prepare for them. We build backup systems for our backup systems. We train our engineers to work with whatever is available. We accept solutions that are good enough instead of waiting for solutions that are perfect." Wellness thought about the Velkari homeworld. It had stable weather, rich resources, and few natural disasters. Her people had grown up in paradise. They had built sophisticated technology because they could afford to. They had never needed to learn improvisation because they had never truly struggled. Over the next day, word spread through the ship about the conversation. Alien crew members began approaching the human team with questions. They wanted to understand human engineering philosophy. Hyejin found herself teaching a group of young Velkari engineers. They gathered in the biodome, surrounded by the crude life support system she had built. The Velkari looked at the exposed wires and improvised connections with fascination. "This system violates 12 safety regulations," one Velkari said. "How did you know it would work?" Hyejin smiled. "I did not know for certain, but I understood the basic principles. The processors could clean air. The ducts could move air. I just had to connect them. Sometimes you have to try things even when you are not sure they will work. But what if it failed?" another asked. "Then we would have tried something else. Humans fail a lot, but we are used to it. The important thing is to keep trying until something works." The Velkari engineers looked uncomfortable with this idea. They had been taught that proper engineering meant calculating everything in advance and only implementing solutions that were guaranteed to work. The human approach felt reckless to them, but they were breathing air from Hygien's reckless system. They were alive because she had been willing to try something uncertain. Meanwhile, Daehyun was showing Valkyrie power specialists how to monitor the battery array. The aliens were amazed by his methods. He did not use sophisticated instruments. He listened to the batteries, felt them for temperature changes, and watched for tiny signs of problems. "You are using your biological senses instead of sensors," one specialist said. "That is so primitive," Daehyun shrugged. "Our biological senses work when sensors fail. Besides, sometimes a human ear can detect problems that instruments miss. I have been listening to machines for 20 years. They tell me when something is wrong." He placed his hand on one battery. "This one is running hot. See how I can feel it? I will adjust the load distribution to give it less work." His hands moved across the controls, making small adjustments. The Valkyrie specialists watched in fascination. Their training said to use precise measurements and make calculated adjustments. Daehyun was using intuition and experience. Yet his methods worked. The power flow stabilized. Senior architect Brexon spent time with Yoonji, examining the welded repairs on the hull. The Thronix architect had spent 200 years designing perfect structures. Now he was learning to appreciate imperfect ones. "These welds are ugly," Brexon said, running his hand over the rough steel. "Yes," Yoonji agreed, "but they are holding the ship together. That is all that matters right now." Brexon was quiet for a moment. "My people have always believed that structural integrity comes from perfection. Every molecule precisely placed. Every angle exactly calculated. But your crude welds work as well as our perfect beams did." How? Yoonji thought about how to explain. "Your beams were perfect, so they could not bend. When stress became too much, they broke. Our welds are imperfect. They have flexibility. They can bend a little without breaking. Sometimes imperfection is stronger than perfection." This idea troubled Brexon deeply. His entire career had been built on the principle that perfection was always better. Now a 26-year-old human was teaching him that imperfection had value. The Lumens programmer spent hours with Minjae, studying his simple control system. They were disturbed by its lack of sophistication, but impressed by its reliability. "Your system cannot optimize," one Lumen said. "It just follows basic instructions." "It is not intelligent," Minjae nodded. "Exactly. It is not intelligent, so it cannot get confused. Our AI tried to be too smart. It tried to find perfect solutions to impossible problems and got stuck. My simple system does not try to be smart. It just does what it is told. That is enough." "But surely intelligence is better than simplicity," another protested. "Usually, yes," Minjae agreed, "but not always. Intelligence is powerful when conditions are good. Simplicity is powerful when conditions are bad. You need both." As these teaching moments happened throughout the ship, a realization spread among the alien crew. They had been thinking about technology wrong. They had believed that advanced technology was always better than simple technology, that optimization was always better than redundancy, that perfection was always better than good enough. The humans showed them a different truth. Advanced technology was better in good conditions, but simple technology was better in bad conditions. Optimization was great when resources were plentiful, but redundancy was essential when resources were limited. Perfection was wonderful when possible, but good enough was vital when perfection was impossible. Taijin shared stories from Earth history. He told them about Apollo 13, when human astronauts survived an explosion in space by building air filters from cardboard and tape. He described the Mars rovers that lasted years beyond their designed lifetimes through constant improvisation. He explained how the International Space Station was built by connecting modules from different countries with different standards, creating a functional whole from incompatible parts. These stories fascinated the aliens. Their civilizations built grand projects according to master plans. Everything was designed to work together perfectly from the start. Humans built grand projects by figuring things out as they went along and making things work through creativity and stubbornness. Velnus called another meeting with Taijin. This time other senior officers attended. They wanted answers. "We need to understand why our approach failed," Velnus said. "We used the best technology from dozens of species. Why did it all break?" Taijin answered carefully. "You optimized for perfection. Every system was designed to work great in normal conditions. But you had no flexibility. When conditions changed, everything failed at once. You built a Formula One race car when you needed a military truck. A Thronix officer spoke up. Are you saying our technology is inferior? No, Tejan said firmly. Your technology is amazing. Your power cores are more efficient than anything humans have. Your structures are more elegant than we could build. Your computers are smarter than ours. But your technology lacks resilience. It cannot survive chaos. He stood and faced them all. Human technology is less advanced, but it is more resilient. We build backups. We train people broadly instead of specializing them narrowly. We accept imperfect solutions. We are comfortable with chaos. That is our strength. What should we do differently? Velnus asked. Tejan smiled. Learn from each other. Combine your sophistication with our resilience. Build systems that are both elegant and robust. Train engineers who can optimize and improvise. Accept that sometimes good enough is better than perfect. The alien officers sat quietly thinking. 3 days ago, they would have rejected these ideas as primitive nonsense. Now they were considering them seriously. The broken Vanguard had taught them a hard lesson about the price of perfection. The Vanguard was 2 days from the starbase when the sensors detected something alarming. A fleet of ships was approaching fast. The communication officer identified them as Korthan Raiders, a rogue faction known for attacking damaged vessels. High Coordinator Velnus stared at the sensor display with growing dread. 12 raider ships were closing in. The Vanguard had no functioning weapons. The defensive shields were offline. The ship could barely maneuver. They were helpless. Velnus sent emergency messages to nearby Union patrol ships. The closest one was 18 hours away. The raiders would arrive in 4 hours. She called an emergency meeting of the senior staff. The mood in the meeting room was grim. The Velkari weapons master explained that their energy cannons required the quantum power cores. Those cores were dead. The Thronix security chief said their kinetic weapons needed structural integrity. The ship lacked. The Lumen's tactical AI was still offline. We cannot fight, the weapons master concluded. We have no choice but to surrender and hope they show mercy. Tejan had been sitting quietly in the corner. Now he spoke up. We are not defenseless. We just do not have traditional weapons. Everyone turned to look at him. Velnus asked, What do you mean? You just heard that all our weapons are offline. Tejan stood up. You are thinking of weapons as military hardware designed for combat. Humans learn to think of weapons as anything that can hurt an enemy. We have cargo holds full of materials. We have systems that still work. We can improvise. The alien officers looked doubtful. Improvised weapons against a military fleet? It sounded desperate, but they had no better options. Velnus gave Tejan permission to try. Tejan gathered his team and explained the plan. They had 4 hours to turn the Vanguard into a trap. It would not be pretty or sophisticated, but it might work. Yunji took the first task. The cargo holds contained thousands of tons of steel plates and beams meant for construction. She proposed using the cargo handling systems as improvised weapons. The magnetic accelerators designed to move freight could launch steel beams at high speed. A Thronix engineer objected. Those systems are not designed for combat velocities. They will burn out. The aim will be terrible. Yunji nodded. They do not need to last long. Just 4 hours. And we do not need accurate aim. We need volume. Fill the space around the ship with high-speed metal. She and a team of volunteers began reprogramming 15 cargo bay systems. They disabled safety limits and overrode the normal controls. By the time they finished, each cargo bay could launch steel beams like giant railguns. The accuracy was poor, but the volume was impressive. Dahyun focused on the dead Velkari power cores. They could not provide controlled power anymore, but they still contained enormous energy. He proposed turning them into bombs. The Velkari engineers were horrified. You want to weaponize our power cores? That is sacrilege. Those cores represent centuries of scientific advancement. Dahyun was blunt. Your advanced cores cannot power the ship, but they can hurt the raiders. We remove them carefully, rig them with detonators, and deploy them as proximity mines. When the raiders get close, the cores explode. The physics were sound. Each core would release a massive thermal pulse if ruptured. Reluctantly, the Velkari helped extract the cores and attach remote detonators. They loaded the cores onto cargo shuttles and set them to drift along the ship's approach vectors. Crude mines waiting for victims. Minji worked on deception. The raiders expected a helpless target. He would give them exactly what they expected to see. Using the communication array, he broadcast fake distress signals that made the Vanguard seem even more damaged. He created false sensor echoes suggesting the ship was venting atmosphere. He transmitted panicked evacuation orders on open channels. The goal was to make the raiders confident and careless. Let them think the Vanguard was completely helpless. Lure them in close where improvised weapons would work best. Hyegen contributed the darkest part of the plan. The ship's industrial sections contained hazardous materials, toxic chemicals, radioactive waste, caustic compounds. These could be dispersed as area denial weapons. She rigged emergency venting systems to release clouds of dangerous materials. Any ship entering these clouds would suffer sensor damage, hull corrosion, and radiation exposure. It was dirty fighting, but the Korthan raiders did not follow clean rules. Throughout the ship, crews worked frantically. Engineers positioned weapons. Cargo handlers loaded steel beams into the improvised railguns. Pilots deployed the rigged power cores. Chemical specialists prepared toxic dispersal systems. Programmers created false signals. Something remarkable happened during these preparations. Alien specialists stopped questioning human methods and started helping. Velkari energy experts helped Daehyun maximize explosive yields. Thronix engineers helped Yunji calculate projectile masses. Lumen's programmers helped Minjae create convincing false data. The entire crew was thinking like humans now, not asking how things should work, but making things work however possible. The Korthan fleet arrived exactly on schedule. 12 raider ships dropped out of hyperspace and surrounded the Vanguard. Their commander sent a mocking message demanding immediate surrender. Minjae, speaking for the Vanguard, responded with carefully practiced panic. "Please do not fire. We are helpless. We will comply. Just give us time to evacuate." The Korthan commander laughed and ordered his fleet to move in. The raiders spread out to optimal boarding positions. Their sensors showed exactly what they expected. A dying ship, no weapons, desperate crew. Easy prey. Taejin watched the raiders approach on the tactical display. He waited until they entered the trap zone. Then he gave the signal. The first 2 Korthan ships hit the proximity mines. The Velkari power cores detonated in brilliant flashes. Thermal pulses overwhelmed the raiders' shields. Both ships tumbled away, crippled and burning. Before the Korthan fleet could react, the Vanguard's improvised railguns opened fire. 15 cargo bays launched steel beams and plates at high velocity. The projectiles filled space like a metal storm. The raiders' defensive systems were designed for energy weapons and missiles. They were not ready for simple kinetic impacts. 3 more raider ships took critical damage. 1 lost its engines. Another suffered multiple hull breaches. A third tumbled out of control, its navigation systems destroyed by a steel beam through the bridge. The Korthan commander, now alarmed, ordered his remaining ships to pull back. But they had already entered Hyejen's hazard zones. Vents opened across the Vanguard's hull, releasing clouds of toxic chemicals and radioactive particles. The raiders flew blind through the poisonous clouds. Their sensors failed. Their targeting systems went haywire. Hull plating began corroding. 2 ships collided in the confusion, neither able to see the other clearly. The Korthan commander ordered full retreat. His fleet scattered, abandoning damaged comrades. Within 20 minutes, the battle was over. 4 raider ships were destroyed or crippled. 5 more fled with significant damage. Only 3 escaped relatively intact. The Vanguard Eternal, supposedly helpless, had routed an entire raider fleet using nothing but improvised weapons and human creativity. As the alien crew celebrated, they realized something profound. They had not won with superior technology. They won by abandoning everything they believed about how warfare should work. They used crude weapons, dirty tactics, and desperate improvisation. They fought like humans. Velnus found Taejin in the command center watching the raiders flee. She stood beside him quietly for a moment. "You have saved us twice now. First from the catastrophe and now from enemies. Both times using methods we would have rejected as beneath us." Taejin shrugged. "Dignity does not matter when you are dead. Survival matters. Everything else comes after." Velnus looked at the tactical display showing the debris field from the battle. Steel beams floated among damaged raider ships. Chemical clouds dispersed slowly. The scene was ugly and chaotic. Nothing like the clean, precise battles the Galactic Union usually fought, but they had won. The supposedly primitive humans had defeated a military fleet with cargo equipment, and industrial waste. The galaxy's ideas about human capabilities would need to change. The Vanguard continued toward the starbase. The ship was damaged and ugly, held together by crude repairs and running on improvised systems. But it was moving under its own power, defended by its own weapons, crewed by people who had learned that sometimes the best solution is whatever works. One more day to safety, one more day to survive, and survival, as the humans had taught them, was all that really mattered. Starbase Zenith appeared on the sensors like a beacon of hope. The massive station hung in space, a city in the stars that served as a hub for trade and diplomacy across this sector. As the damaged Vanguard approached, every ship in the area stopped to watch. The flagship looked terrible. Steel plates were welded across its elegant hull like bandages on a wounded soldier. Chemical stains marked where toxic clouds had been vented. Exposed cables snaked across sections where panels had been removed. The ship that had once been the pride of the galaxy now looked like a flying junkyard. But it was alive. It was moving. And everyone knew the story of how 5 humans had saved it when the galaxy's finest engineers could not. The Vanguard docked at the repair berths. Medical teams rushed aboard to help injured crew members. Engineers came to assess the damage. News reporters wanted interviews. Everyone wanted to know how the impossible had happened. Tajin and his team were exhausted. They had worked for 5 days straight with barely any sleep. But before they could rest, the Galactic Union called for a formal inquiry. Representatives from all member species gathered to understand what had gone wrong and what had gone right. The inquiry took place in a large conference room on the starbase. Hundreds of officials attended. Tajin, Hyejin, Daehyun, Minjae, and Yunji sat at a table facing them. They felt small and insignificant in front of so many important aliens. The head of the inquiry, a senior Velkari administrator, spoke first. "We have reviewed the data from the Vanguard. We need to understand how 5 human engineers accomplished what hundreds of specialists from advanced species could not. Please explain your methods." Tajin stood up. His voice was calm and steady. "We did what we were trained to do. We improvised. We used available resources. We accepted imperfect solutions. We prioritized survival over elegance. These are basic human engineering principles." A Thronix official asked, "But why could our engineers not do the same?" "We have superior education and centuries more experience," Hyejin answered this time. "Your education is excellent for normal conditions. You learn to build perfect systems when resources are available, but you do not learn to work with chaos. Earth is chaotic. Nothing stays stable for long. We had to learn different skills because our world demanded them." The inquiry continued for hours. The humans demonstrated their problem-solving approaches. They explained how they had repurposed garden processors for life support, connected shuttle batteries for power, welded steel plates for structural support, and created simple control systems to replace sophisticated AI. They also explained their improvised defense against the Korthan raiders. The aliens were particularly interested in this. Human military thinking was completely different from standard galactic doctrine. The Union had rules for civilized warfare. Humans had fought dirty and won. At the end of the inquiry, the head administrator made a surprising statement. "This inquiry finds that humanity possesses unique capabilities of significant value to the Galactic Union. We recommend that human engineers be integrated into all major projects, not as assistants but as equal partners." The room buzzed with discussion. Some species agreed enthusiastically, others were skeptical, but no one could deny that humans had proven themselves. Over the following weeks, things changed quickly. Universities across the galaxy requested human instructors to teach improvisation and adaptive engineering. Military academies wanted to learn unconventional tactics. Research stations hired human consultants to review their safety systems. Earth suddenly became important. The planet that had been dismissed as primitive was now seen as the homeworld of survival specialists. Young engineers from advanced species came to study at human institutions. They wanted to learn how to work in harsh conditions, how to improvise, how to accept imperfection. The Galactic Union had to make a decision about the Vanguard itself. Should they rebuild it to original specifications, restoring the elegant perfection it once had, or should they do something different? After long debates, the Council chose a new path. The Vanguard would be rebuilt as a hybrid ship. It would combine alien sophistication with human resilience. Elegant systems backed by crude redundancies, Optimized technology with simple backups. Intelligence paired with reliability. Taijin was appointed chief engineering consultant for the reconstruction. It was the first time a human had held such a high position. His team grew from 5 to dozens as more human engineers joined the project. They worked side by side with alien specialists, teaching and learning from each other. The reconstruction took 2 years. When the new Vanguard was complete, it looked different from before. It was still beautiful, but now it also looked tough. Valkyrie power cores were backed by banks of human batteries. Thronix crystal structures were reinforced with practical welding. Lumen's AI systems had manual override controls clearly visible. Most notably, some of the welded steel plates from the emergency repairs remained as permanent features. They could have been removed and replaced with proper hull plating. Instead, they were kept as reminders of the crisis and the lessons learned. The recommissioning ceremony was grand. Representatives from every member species attended. High Coordinator Velnus gave a speech that acknowledged difficult truths. "We built a perfect ship and it nearly killed us," Velnus said to the gathered crowd. "Humans built imperfect solutions and saved us. Today we recommission the Vanguard not as a return to perfection, but as a commitment to resilience. We honor those who taught us that the best answer is not always the most elegant one. Sometimes it is just the one that works." Taijin, Hyejin, Daehyun, Minjae, and Yoonji stood together watching the ceremony. They thought about how far they had come. 5 maintenance workers who had been barely noticed were now respected throughout the galaxy. Yoonji looked at the reconstructed flagship. "It is not as pretty as it was before." Taijin smiled. "No, but it will survive. That is better." The changes went beyond just one ship. Throughout the galaxy, engineering philosophy was shifting. Species that had focused entirely on optimization began incorporating redundancy. Institutions that had taught specialization started training generalists. Cultures that had valued perfection began appreciating practicality. Human elements appeared everywhere. Backup systems on stations, redundant controls on ships, fault-tolerant programming in critical infrastructure, simple tools alongside sophisticated technology. The galaxy did not abandon its pursuit of elegance, but it now balanced elegance with resilience. New collaborative projects emerged. Joint research teams combined human adaptability with alien sophistication. Cross-species engineering groups created systems that were both advanced and robust. The results were better than what any single species could build alone. 10 years after the crisis, Admiral Taijin stood in the Vanguard's engineering bay. He had been promoted several times and now oversaw all Galactic Union fleet engineering. The bay around him reflected the synthesis that had saved the ship. Elegant alien technology with practical human backups. A young Valkyrie engineer approached him with a question about balancing optimization and redundancy. Taijin walked to one of the preserved welded steel plates. He ran his hand across the rough surface. "This weld saved the Vanguard," he said to the young engineer. "It is not beautiful. It is not optimized. It violates every elegant principle your species taught mine, but it worked when nothing else would. Remember that. The best solution is the one that keeps you alive." The young Valkyrie nodded with understanding. This was the lesson the galaxy had learned through pain and survival. Perfection was admirable, but resilience was essential. Intelligence was valuable, but simplicity had its place. Elegance was wonderful, but crude solutions sometimes saved lives. Hyejin now ran a successful consulting firm that taught lateral thinking to engineers across the galaxy. Daehyun was a legend among troubleshooters, called to the most difficult repair situations. Minjae led a movement for robust software design. Yoonji served on the Union Standards Committee, advocating for resilient design. All of them had proven that being different was not the same as being inferior. Human methods looked primitive to sophisticated aliens, but those primitive methods had value that sophistication lacked. The Vanguard Eternal continued its journeys through the galaxy. It was no longer just a diplomatic vessel. It was a teaching platform, demonstrating how different approaches could work together. Crews from across the galaxy served aboard, learning to think like humans when conditions demanded it, and like their own species when conditions allowed it. The ship visited Earth regularly now. Young aliens came to see the harsh world that had created such adaptable people. They walked through Earth cities and saw how humans built things to withstand earthquakes and storms. They visited Earth's universities and learned how humans trained engineers to work with limited resources. They began to understand. Adversity had made humans strong in ways that prosperity never could. The galaxy's elder civilizations had grown up in paradise and built perfect technology for perfect conditions. Humans had grown up struggling and built imperfect technology that worked in any conditions. Both approaches had value. Together, they were stronger than either alone. As Taijin finished his shift and prepared to leave the engineering bay, he looked around one more time. The bay was full of engineers from